Imagine a war so devastating it changed the face of an entire continent. That was the 30 Years' War. For 3 long decades, from 1618 to 1648, Central Europe was embroiled in a conflict that claimed the lives of millions of soldiers and civilians. Initially viewed as a religious dispute between Protestants and Catholics, the war quickly evolved into a power struggle involving major European powers. The outcome? A dramatic shift in the balance of power, tipping the scales in favor of France and setting the stage for future conflicts. The 30 Years' War, a conflict that would forever change the course of European history. The year was 1618. A power struggle was about to ignite a blaze that would consume Europe for 3 decades. At the heart of it all were 2 key figures, Emperor Ferdinand II and Frederick V of the Palatinate. Ferdinand II, a fervent Catholic, sat on the throne of Bohemia, wielding considerable influence across the Holy Roman Empire. However, his rule was soon to be challenged. The Protestant Frederick V, a member of the House of Wittelsbach, was chosen to replace Ferdinand II as the King of Bohemia, marking the beginning of a conflict that was initially steeped in religious tension. The tussle for the Bohemian throne was not merely a dispute between 2 individuals, but rather it was a microcosm of the larger power dynamics at play within Central Europe. While religion played a central role as the trigger, it was the undercurrents of political ambition and power struggles that fueled the flames of this destructive war. The deposition of Ferdinand II and the installation of Frederick V was akin to a spark landing on a pile of dry tinder. The seeds of a great conflict had been sown. Europe was on the brink of a war that would last for 30 years. As the flames of war spread, the conflict became less about religion and more about power. What started as an internal struggle within the Holy Roman Empire rapidly escalated into a broader European conflict, a chessboard where great powers maneuvered and clashed for dominance. The stakes were no longer just domestic, but continental. External powers, drawn by the allure of influence and the promise of power, began to stake their claims. Spain, for instance, saw an opportunity to bolster its position, to expand its reach beyond the Iberian Peninsula. Denmark, too, was not immune to the siren call of expansion, seeking to elevate its position in the hierarchy of European powers. Meanwhile, Sweden, the emerging northern power, saw a chance to establish itself on the European stage. The Dutch Republic, for its part, was driven by the dual motives of religious freedom and economic prosperity. They threw their lot into the fray, adding another layer of complexity to an already convoluted conflict. This was not just a war of armies, but also a war of ideas, a war of ambitions. Each state, each power, had its own objectives, its own vision of what the future of Europe should look like. It was a struggle not just for territory, but for the very soul of the continent. As the war raged on, it became clear that this was not just a religious conflict, but a battle for control of Europe. After 30 long, bloody years, the war-weary nations sought an end to the conflict. The year was 1648. The stage was set in the Westphalian cities of Munster and Osnabrück in Germany. It was here that the Peace of Westphalia was negotiated, a series of peace treaties that would bring about the end of the 30 Years' War. The Peace of Westphalia was a major turning point in the annals of European history. It wasn't just a ceasefire or a truce, it was a monumental shift in the balance of power. The treaties granted greater autonomy to the states within the Holy Roman Empire, allowing them more control over their internal affairs. This was a significant change from the previously centralized power, marking a new era of political structure in Europe. Another pivotal outcome of the Peace of Westphalia was the recognition of Dutch independence. After a decades-long struggle, the Dutch Republic was finally acknowledged as a sovereign state, free from Spanish rule. This was a huge victory for the Dutch, and it set a precedent for other nations seeking independence. The Peace of Westphalia marked the end of the 30 Years' War, but its impact was far from over. The war was over, but the Europe that emerged from the ashes was forever changed. The 30 Years' War, a saga of destruction and power struggles, had left its indelible mark on the continent. The aftermath was a Europe transformed, a new world order conceived amidst the ruins of the old. France emerged as the triumphant phoenix, its wings spread wide over the continent, shifting the balance of power firmly in its favour. The Peace of Westphalia had not just ended a war, it had sown the seeds of a new Europe. The states within the Holy Roman Empire, previously leashed to the emperor's will, now held increased autonomy, a breath of freedom in a land scarred by conflict. Yet, the war had set a precedent for future conflicts. The religious and political divides it exposed, the economic and territorial ambitions it fueled, would echo through the centuries, shaping wars and revolutions yet to come. The 30 Years' War, a conflict that lasted a generation, altered the course of history and reshaped the map of Europe.